And we're rolling in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to this KOSA special presentation, Hear Me Roar, The Power of She. This 4-part series is designed to educate, empower, and inspire our listeners. I am your host, Leela Kiawat, along with my panel,
Sarah Schechter,
Nora Cesaria Dents.
Joining us today is,
Keep going.
Joining us today, we welcome a very special guest, Mimi Chakarova. Alright, so,
Calm down. Breathe.
You have done a lot of work in documentary filmmaking. Do you feel that this work is rewarding and important? And if so, why?
I think it's extremely important because telling stories of people who sometimes don't have the ability, the time, people are busy doing what they're doing, right? Living their lives. And if the storytelling that you do is about struggle, which has always been my primary interest, people don't have time and don't have the outlets to tell their own stories. So this is where we come in as documentarians and, show the world a glimpse of what these lives are and the importance of those lives. The way I perceive documentary filmmakers and journalists as well is we're just messengers. I don't like to put too much self-importance on the act of making films because I don't think we're that relevant. We just have a set of skills. For example, my production team, they come from a lot of experience and they know how to craft stories. But ultimately, it's about the person whose story we're telling or about the issue that we're trying to bring to light.
Now, Mimi, just for the sake of those who are tuning in, could you give us a little bit about your background first?
Sure. How deep do you want me to go?
Oh, we like to go real deep because I've read on you. You wear a lot of hats, a lot of important hats, and this is about women in power. So we want to hear all about what you do.
Okay. Well, I'll just try to sum it up. I grew up in a country called Bulgaria. I grew up in a really small village, raised by my grandmother. So I know what it's like to live a very simple, poor life. But I had a lot of happiness as a child. And then at the age of 13, this political system, communism in Eastern Europe, throughout Eastern Europe, collapsed. So my mother and I immigrated to the United States. And I was 13. I didn't speak a word of English. It was a really difficult, confusing time because I also ended up attending an inner city public school in Baltimore. So that's how I learned English. And my classmates, it was a school that was, in the city, not in, people always say, well, what's the difference between the city and the county, in places like this. Baltimore, as in many other cities throughout the United States, at that time was extremely segregated. And so you had, black people living in one neighborhood, you had white people living in another neighborhood, and really there was not a lot of immigrants. So finding my own place, like finding my own sense of community, was a real challenge, especially when you don't speak the language. But down the line, I remember my classmates accepting me and kind of giving me this home, and all of my classmates were black. So going to their houses and working 3 jobs, because I had to work a lot of jobs from 13 until I moved to San Francisco, I saw a different type of reality in the United States that awakened that desire to tell stories. I don't think that back then, at the age of 13, 14, 15, I knew that I was going to be a filmmaker, but I knew that I wanted to take photos, and I knew that I wanted to be in places that sometimes you don't understand, and you're trying to make sense of a different type of situation. So then I moved to San Francisco. I enrolled in City College of San Francisco, which is an amazing place. I highly recommend it. I had amazing professors, and then I got a full-time scholarship to go to the San Francisco Art Institute, and I was pursuing photography the whole time. And not only photography, but fine art photography, which there's no jobs in fine art photography. But I didn't know that at the time. So after graduating, I guess I'm trying to get to the point of social awareness and social awakening. At what moment do you say, I want to live my life of service to others. And that was a trip I made to South Africa. This was 4 years after apartheid had ended, looking at the living conditions in the townships, meeting women who were amazing women, just struggling, and the political violence which they had experienced. I thought, this is how I want to spend the rest of my life. So I started teaching at UC Berkeley at the Graduate School of Journalism. I spent 14 years teaching there. Then I was also teaching at Stanford. And the reason was that early on, probably in my early 20s, I came to this realization that every person has a purpose, right? And so what is my purpose? Like, why am I here? And I thought my purpose should be twofold. I should create work that inspires, but I should also inspire others to do the same thing. And I thought teaching is the best way to do that, because if I have an audience of young people, you know, I can reach them and I can kind of infuse them with the same passion and desire for social change. Because young people, unlike a lot of adults, are now cynical. You guys still believe in the possibility of a better life. And I love that about you. I love that, you know, you have the spark. Like, no one has, you know, you're just these little flames, you know, and it's beautiful. And that's why I was teaching. And then in between teaching, I would go to very, very dark places. You know, I was a war correspondent for a while, always freelance. I went to places that were really dangerous and really, really depressing and hard to be at, psychologically and physically, emotionally, all of the above. And then I started a project, which is probably what you're referring to, that took 10 years, on an investigation on sex trafficking, and kind of piecing together this reality of where I come from and how a lot of the girls, especially in rural communities similar to my own, were sold into sex slavery. In, you know, different countries, usually wealthier countries, that would just shut a blind eye because too many politicians and too many police officers and too many, you know, businessmen and people in power were involved. And, you know, to see women and young girls treated as commodity, you know, like vegetables. It was the same as looking at a vegetable market, you know, the way they were shipped, the way they were handled, the way they were resold. So I spent 10 years doing that. And really kind of, you know, created this body of work which did a lot of good. Back to your question about, is it important? Yeah, it changed laws. You know, millions of people got to see the film. Millions of people got to learn something different that was not a Hollywood version of what trafficking looks like. And it really awakened people's consciousness. But I burnt out. So Still I Rise and a lot of the other work that I did after The Price of Sex is my kind of reaction to, you know, having hope and you know, having that thing that I just talked about, having that spark of, no, change is possible and we're not doomed. We make a lot of mistakes as human beings, as a species. We know that. We have screwed up this planet in more ways than I have time to tell you, and you guys know. We do horrible things to one another. But that's not all, you know. There are amazing people doing remarkable things, and the camera is just not on them because, as I mentioned earlier, they don't have time and they don't have the interest to be in the spotlight because they're too busy making a difference in their community, and they're too busy, you know, just living a life of purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's definitely heartening, you know, kind of inspiring to hear that, you know. Restores a little bit. And it was interesting hearing about your life story because I didn't realize, but a lot of my father's life actually kind of intersects with yours. He grew up in the Soviet Union and then is now a photographer and documentary filmmaker as well. And then my mom was a wartime correspondent, so hearing you speak is a little like, oh, you know, wow. There's a lot of interesting similarities. And I know that those two things have definitely affected the way that they view themselves as storytellers. So what about your experiences? I mean, all the things you just listed have helped you learn about yourself.
I mean, you're asking me this question, and I'm thinking I have all these questions for you because I want to know what is it like as a child to grow up in that environment, you know, because I have a daughter. So I'm thinking how, you know, you always think as a parent, how am I going to raise my child, anyway, so it's just
That's
I'm
interesting.
curious about you. And but what did I find? Your question is, what did I find out about all these experiences? How
I
did
guess kind of restating it in a more
Yeah.
concise, clear way. Like when you kind of began to fit into this role of storyteller over time and realized that that's what you wanted to do, what did you learn about yourself, and like what have you kind of grown into?
the three things that are the most important things that I've learned, and it's examples that other people have shown me, and also just experience. And so if you were to say you only have 30 seconds to give me the magic combination of what keeps you doing work,
Mm-hmm.
that's sometimes very challenging, those three things would be the following: humility, having humility, being a generous person, and having a good sense of humor. Those three things. If you have those three things, character traits in place, you're good to go. And I'll explain. If you're not humble, and if you think that it's all about you, which, in our industry, in filmmaking and, in documentary, whatever, actually in every industry, we are egocentric, and we're that kind of animal. We are. And so we get, and especially today with all the social media and just the obsession of the self, right? It's like, it's all about me, it's all about what I'm doing. Look, everybody, I'm doing something really important. Hey, pay attention, that type of attitude. That narcissism is what I'm talking about. So the narcissism is not going to get you far. And that's, and fortunately, I never had that, but I was surrounded by a lot of people who did. So I thought, man, it's so much nicer to be humble and let the work talk about you. And you don't need to really market yourself. Just make good work and let the work serve its purpose. So humility. Generosity is so important because people are incredibly generous with us. I was just down at the U.S.-Mexico border 3 weeks ago with my camera woman, who's a former student of mine and an amazing cinematographer, incredibly talented. And so we do a lot of our projects together. So we're at the U.S.-Mexico border, and we're showing up at somebody's house that's right at the border on the U.S. side at 5 o'clock in the morning, entering with cameras, filming. We're being offered breakfast. We get into this car, there are all these mosquitoes, everywhere. And, we're going to the school where one of the kids gets dropped off. We become a part of that family's life, even if it's just for a few hours. They open up their world to us. So they're so generous with their time, with their food, I can't tell you how many times I've spent nights on people's couches or on somebody's floor in some village because there is nowhere to sleep, and I want to keep working. And so for us to receive this kind of generosity requires for us to also have the strength to sometimes put the camera down and say, you know what, your kid is sick, yeah, let's go to the pharmacy and get that medicine because I have a vehicle, or I can get a vehicle, and I know, how important that is, or I have some money that I can, just being human first. And by being human first, it also means being generous with people because you always want to be able to go back to the places you visit, right? And I've been extremely fortunate to tell you that there is not any country that I've been to or any little town or city where I cannot go back and knock on the door and say, hey, do you remember me? Can I stay with you for 3 or 4 days? And that goes in my own community that's become here, right? And also in other communities, because I don't really differentiate them. I just feel like I just don't. This is where I live, but also when I work, I take me anywhere I go, and I apply the same rules. And the third is a sense of humor, because if you take everything so seriously, you're gonna not only burn out, but just that little spark. You have to be able to laugh at things, even at the darkest moment. And you have to carry yourself in such a way that's not intimidating to other people, that's not off-putting to other people, because you're asking a lot of people, right? Yeah. So if I'm like, hey, Dolores, I want to come to your house at 5 tomorrow morning. I want to film your kids. I want to film you brushing your teeth. I want to see you waking up. I don't want to see any makeup. I want to actually watch you put on your makeup, and I want to I want to meet who you're with. I want to take a drive with you to work. And I'm going to be this close to you the whole day. The camera is going to be this close the whole day. That's asking a lot, right? That's asking a lot. So, wow. Does that answer?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna think about that for a while. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
And for those of you who are just tuning in, this is Hear Me Roar, The Power of She. I am your host, Lila Kiawat, and we're joined with producer, filmmaker, and photojournalist, Mimi Chakarova. So tell us how you manage your emotions, like dealing with a subject that's so sort of dark as sex trafficking.
How do I manage my emotions? I mean, okay, there are two things you can do. You can physically stay strong, you know? So, like, being physically, I remember when I was doing the sex trafficking work, I was going to the gym in a boxing gym in East Oakland every single day, training every single day, and, you know, to the point where people in my gym thought I was going professional. And I said, no, I'm just staying in shape so I can do this work. So, because being physically strong, it gives you the illusion that you can get out of bad situations. And I say illusion because if someone has a gun on you, there's nothing you can really do, no matter how strong you think you are. But it gives you the confidence. So as a woman going into risky situations, and I did a lot of undercover work, so I'm dealing with people who are part of mafias, and I'm dealing with traffickers and pimps, and people who really don't view us as anything that deserves a life, if that makes sense. You know, so dealing with those kinds of people, I had to feel that I was strong enough to come out of it alive. So it wasn't even about emotional. It was just about the day-to-day. I have this job to do. I don't have backup. I'm doing this alone. I'm not part of a network that's going to pull me out. I mean, I was always working with FBI agents as consultants, so I would talk to FBI agents who did investigations here and in other places, mostly in the United States though, but that was just for advice. When it came to being in some brothel in Turkey or in Dubai or in, you know, some other country in Europe, I knew that I was on my own. So you deal with the emotions after, and those emotions come when you come home. So the moment you think that you're safe is when all of them just flood you. And it's really, really difficult. I think I always tell my friends this, that had I continued to do this type of work, I would never have had a child, you know, because that decision is a decision of hope, right? The decision is, I'm bringing somebody into this world, and I already know it's a really dark world, but I'm doing it because you have to have a sense of hope that you can make it better. But if you're this deep for this long and all you're surrounded by is darkness, it's very difficult to have that hope. So emotionally it took a long time to come to terms with not all of us are evil and not all of us exploit. You know, the majority of people are actually good, and you know, it's what you choose to focus on. So if I choose to focus on crime, drugs, weapons, and trafficking, that's going to become my world. And it's really a choice you make. And I felt like I spent a decade on that, and I did the best that I could, and then it was time to move on. And you know, it's funny, I made another film after The Price of Sex, and I had a lot of young women. It's called Men, A Love Story. So it's all about men and how they perceive women, and they all talk about love. So it's kind of like the opposite of The Price of Sex. It's almost like, come on guys, give me something that's actually normal. Like, give me something where you don't have to pay for sex, you don't beat the women, you're not exploiting them. Like, give me something good. And they did. There are these incredible stories. We drove, you know, through 25 different states in America and documented this. So it's a wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous, poetic film. And it premiered at the Telluride Film Festival, which is an amazing place to premiere a film. And I had these young women come to me after the screening, after the first screening, and they said, we feel betrayed by you. And I said, really? I'm the same person. Oh, we thought you were a feminist. How could you do a film about men?
Oh, my.
They already have enough of a platform. And I thought, you don't get it. This is not a film about men. It's all about women. It's all about us kind of reclaiming our position of, wait a second, we should not be talked about as objects.
Right.
I spent 10 years talking about and looking and witnessing how women are treated like I told you, like cows, like stock and vegetables and fruit and things that you move around. And I wanted to spend the next few years of my life documenting something that was about the beauty of relationships and love and the beauty of not being in an abusive situation.
Nice.
So I didn't think that I was betraying anyone, but I guess we tend to put people in boxes, and somehow I was put in this box where I would forever do film about sex slavery, or and I wanted to get out of there emotionally. That's what helped me. I needed to get out of that box and redefine my sense of, look, I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to keep on telling the stories that I think need to be told.
How do you think that having a child has affected your creative viewpoint and just your outlook on the world, and how has it affected your work?
It's not just having a child, it's having a daughter. Because I always thought that I would have a son for some reason, and I thought I could somehow handle a son, because I always thought I'm going to teach him how to be a man. It's like I've seen men not being men, so I'm going to teach my son. And I would talk like this for years, and then it's just poetic justice. Then I get a daughter, so I'm thinking, oh my God, like a girl. After all that, like, how am I going to keep her safe? You read these statistics, and they're not statistics, that 1 in 3 girls is sexually assaulted, like 1 of 3, like 1 of 3. So it's like, out of us here, what are we, 5? Like 2 of us, likely. And it's probably even more, to be honest. So then I'm thinking, that's like, how am I going to keep her safe? I'm going to sign her up for martial arts, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. But that's not, you don't choose that for your child. They make these choices, right? So, how has it affected me? I mean, it turns your world upside down. It's like, because I'm not just responsible for me, I'm now responsible for someone else. Yet it's beautiful. It's like this beautiful thing. And I did it much later in life. I was in my late 30s when I had a child, because I was so busy doing all these other things that one day I looked and thinking, dang, I'm 37 years old, like, what am I gonna do? I still want to have a child. Anyway, so it changes everything, like this. And life is never the same again. And also work-wise, I mean, you and I were emailing, like I'm traveling. I was in Brazil 3 weeks ago, and then, I'm shooting in New York, but I like the fact that she is growing up knowing that her mom works, and knowing that her mom has this job, and knowing that her mom, just like your parents, like her mom tells stories, and these stories are important. She's my biggest fan. She's 3 years old, and I'll be showing her something like a rough cut of Still I Rise. She'll be like, Mommy, again? She'll want me to play again. Sometimes we play this stuff 25 times, and she's just sitting like, let's do it again. And I'm thinking, do you like this part? And she's like, yeah, it's nice. What about the one with the doggy? Yeah, it's really nice. So, she has the patience, and she's growing up in this very visual, kind of like, we're putting these stories together, we're editing, we spend a lot of time with footage, and she's into it, because it's just...
Nice.
So, yeah, it changes, though, but, you have to, I work when she naps, and when I'm home, like now, if I have to come here, somebody's got to watch her, so it's, you're no longer alone, you're not responsible for yourself anymore.
I have a question, about coming up in the industry, because when I first started, it seemed like everybody in charge was male. And to get around it on so many levels was mind-boggling. And you created your own production company, so now you're in charge. But I would like for them to understand how to navigate through, because it's still somewhat a male-dominated industry, how to navigate through it, because I've even had people in charge of me that I had to almost feed them these ideas in order for them to take them and use them as their own, for them to work, So as young women, I just want them to understand what would be probably the most challenging that they would have to navigate, or is there a formula for navigating through?
I think the formula, we are the formula. We have to lift our you guys are my sisters. You're like my little sisters. So it's my responsibility, as it is yours. and all the other women who are now adult women and have had experience, to bring our little sisters and say, hey, I got a job for you.
There you go.
Hey, I got a grant for you. And so part of Still I Rise is also creating a grant program for women. Because, so it's not just, you know, I have guys on my team, so I'm not going to say I'm going to hire women. No, because there is a lot of talented people I've worked with, and I'm going to bring them on. But when it comes to opportunities, like women artists, musicians, storytellers, you better believe I'm looking out for my little sisters, because, you know, we need every help we can get.
Yes.
And especially when you own a business, it's your duty. It's your duty. And if I was just talking about, oh, I have all these young women who I mentor, which I do, but that's not enough. Mentoring is not enough. You also have to provide funding and opportunities and say, hey, you know, I'm working with this amazing artist from Argentina. She's 24 years old, and this girl is overflowing with talent. I mean, you cannot imagine how talented this young woman is. And I'm like, and she's like, and I have no opportunity. I have a degree, and there is nothing I can do with my degree. And I'm like, listen, you know, I found a way to wire transfer money to her, because she's not even, like, we're not in the same continent.
Yeah.
But I'm like, look, we're going to make this work. You deliver on time, and we're going to, you know, we're communicating through email and Skype and whatever, you know, like, whatever way we can do it. But, you know, she's getting paid, and she's getting paid for work she loves. So you find ways, you know, you raise money, you find ways to give young women opportunities, which includes you. So, you know, you have my email address, and I'm serious. Like, if you have music, if you have stories that you want to contribute. So, let's see.
That's very generous. I love it.
Interested in filmmaking. I mean, that's very comforting to hear. So, like, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think, and I don't think that, you know, I think there is a lot of women who are just fed up. They're like, I know there's a lot of women who are like, enough is enough. Enough is enough. It's just, you can't imagine how many film festivals I've gone to, and it's just like, wow, it's still, or photojournalists, you know, when you go abroad, and it's like, wow, all of my colleagues are male. Like, what the hell, you know, we're so much of the world, yet I'm not seeing us.
Yeah.
You know, so many of my students at Berkeley, you know, the majority of my students were women, and then they're not in the field. Like, what happened? Right. So you have a graduate degree in journalism from UC Berkeley. What happened? How come it's still a male-dominated, you know, when you go to the newsrooms, it's still men, a lot of men. I don't know, it's frustrating. So I feel like, but that's, I really truly think we are the answer. It's not about, oh, you know, I have a problem with this. Like, fix it.
Fix it. Exactly.
Let's find a way to fix it.
Girl power. I love it.
Little by little, you know, just making a little bit. We can change it. We are changing it.
I love it.
So,
Leila?
So, what are some of your latest projects that you've been working on?
So my primary focus, I do music documentaries as well with amazing musicians. So I wouldn't call them music videos because they're much more extended. You know, they're, you know, much longer. So they're more like music documentaries. So we do this through A Moment in Time Productions, which is the production company that I started. But Still I Rise is really the core of like what's in my heart right now. You know, we're about to release a film called The Lesson. And so I told you some of the stories are about individuals who we find inspiring and really whose stories are incredibly uplifting and just kind of give you this kind of like, wow, you know, this is something to wake up in the morning and aspire to. And then some are based on issues. And so The Lesson, which is about to get released, is based on an issue, and it's about how U.S. history is taught in the United States of America. Because I remember when I was in Baltimore, I had no, and this is also with my classmate, we had no idea. I mean, okay, I come from another country, but these are people, you know, who were born and raised in the United States, and we have no idea the details of slavery, for example, or the details of what happened to the original people who were here before the Europeans arrived, you know, so... There were little paragraphs, but nothing that went in depth. And I don't know how it is in California, but I read this article last year about schools in Texas. You cannot imagine how slavery is described.
Oh, yeah.
In some of the middle schools in Texas. Like, you know, slaves were, you know, really grateful to their masters, and they were, you know, had dances, and they would create art that would bring those traditions from Africa. You know, and I'm thinking, wow, so The Lesson is a reaction to that, and it's based in Detroit, and it's a grandfather telling his grandson, the real truth as to what happened. And so we've been really blessed to have incredible photography and footage, well, not so much footage, but photography from the Library of Congress.
Wow, nice.
Tap into and, you know, pull out images that I had never seen and my colleagues had never seen. To, you know, and this, the lesson is really for your generation, because I think if it's not in the history books, then we have to kind of redefine ways to get that information out there and do it in a beautiful way that really honors the real, because, you know, we have to honor the real people who sweat and blood created the opportunities that we have today, right here and right now. So,
it's so funny that you're saying that, because Sarah and Leela are doing a show along with another young lady called Ctrl Z. And it is about that very thing that you're talking about.
Really?
Yeah, they are.
About how history is taught in schools?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
I know you guys are sitting there going, oh my goodness. I was waiting for you guys to cut in because I'm sitting here about to bust.
I mean, yeah.
Great minds think alike.
Interesting that you said that, because for a while I was like, I don't know what, you know, we should do a radio show on. And then I realized, like, something that, you know, we as students have control of, and textbooks.
Yeah.
I mean, fortunately, you know, going to like a liberal arts school, I think that we've been pretty fortunate with the way that history is taught. And even so, there are still serious, like, problems kind of in, you know, just academic, like, the entire community. So we wanted to re-examine how, you know, textbooks are written, how, like, American history is taught. So we came up with a show called Ctrl Z, which is the step to go back and edit something on a computer. So it's like, and also because we're Generation Z. So we're
That's a
going
great title, actually. That's really
Sarah
brilliant.
came up with it.
Yeah,
From my
very
mom
cool.
But it's like going back and seeing, kind of re-examining how history is taught in schools and what
Where
we
can
can
I see that or hear that?
on
KO
Yeah.
Of course, we'll send you some content.
Yes.
I will email you
This
once
is
we
so
start
inspiring.
producing.
It makes me, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And I really want you guys to check out the lesson and see what you think of it.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
I think it's all. Yeah,
And
sorry,
also
go ahead.
just kind of find ways to, Dolores, please help me out here. Like, just get these young ladies connected.
Oh,
Get
that's
them,
beautiful.
Get them paid too. Like,
Yes.
Can you put us in touch, please?
I can. I absolutely
That would be really
can.
cool. That would be
Beautiful.
No, but amazing.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
so good. I think like we're also trying to talk about historical figures who've been left out. I think recently they took out Hillary Clinton and Helen Keller from a couple of textbooks, which was just taking out powerful women.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do we have any last words?
Any last questions?
Thank you so much for coming in. I think that's definitely, I don't know, our conversation has changed my perspective. I don't know, you know, like I'm kind of seeing how you can see the world, like as a woman, but also as an artist. So that was really helpful. Thank you.
Hey, listen, stay strong. Like, don't let anyone. The most amazing thing that you have is right in here, you know. So don't let anything else define who you are. And I know it's tough. It's so tough being a girl. But don't let any of the outside forces and outside voices tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Like, just stay true to who you are, and the people around you who you trust and you feel have your best interest in heart.
And also just thank you so much for making such powerful documentaries and also going into like more uplifting stuff as well, just like showing the duality is really important. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for opening up to us and like telling us that you want to get connected with us. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
I really want
You guys are my audience. Like, I don't know if you get this, but I do everything that I'm creating is for you. It's for your generation. Because I think if you cannot get us out of the place with where we are, there is no hope. It's in your hands. So I want to give you all the tools that I have and all the things that I've learned to open doors, because you need to carry on with the work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like I can't keep doing this until I'm 80. You know, I'm gonna need to take some vacation time at some point. I have not had a vacation. Do you know how many years? I don't remember the last time I've had a vacation. So at one point I'm gonna say, hey, I got all these young women doing all this amazing work, and I can just take a little bit of time off because, right? Because you are understanding this and the importance to just carry on and keep that going. So we can't just stop with 20 or 30 women and say, okay, now we're done. No, it needs to carry through.
Yeah. And where can we watch your documentaries?
They're all free and they're all online. It's
great.
Still I Rise films.org. So we created this platform to make sure they're accessible.
Great.
Yeah, check them out, and also I'll give you my personal, because you'll see the email address there, but I'll give you my personal email, so because I wanna make sure that you I want you to pitch ideas. I want to hear from you. I want to find ways to like give you internships, paid internships, and just not not just the three of you, but other people from the school, and just keep this connection. I mean, we're right here.
That's
we're editing
amazing.
this stuff right here. So.
Well, we want to thank our special guest, Mimi Chakarova, for joining us on this edition of Hear Me Roar, The Power of She. I am your host, Lila Kiawat, along with my panel,
Sarah Schechter,
and Nora Cesaria Dents.
Thank you for listening to KOSARadio.org, where minds, words, music, and rhymes meet.